The dawn light streamed through the high windows of the great hall, bathing everything in a golden glow, as my song faded into silence. The wolves who had been fighting moments before now stood united, their expressions transformed from rage to wonder. I could feel the energy of my voice still humming in the air around us, binding us together in ways I was only beginning to understand. Alaric's hand remained firmly clasped in mine, warm and steady. His storm-gray eyes hadn't left my face since I'd begun singing, as if I were some rare celestial event he feared might vanish if he looked away. "Remarkable," he murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "The legends didn't do your kind justice." Before I could respond, the Western Alpha, Raoul, approached us. Despite his wounds and the blood matting his silver hair, he moved with the fluid grace of a predator. He inclined his head toward me, not a full bow, but a gesture of respect I'd never received from any Alpha. "The Moon Singer returns," he said, his voice carrying across the now silent hall. "After centuries of absence, the balance begins to restore itself." Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. I felt their eyes on me, curious, wary, hopeful, so different from the contemptuous glances I'd endured for years. "The Eastern Pack has much to answer for." The Southern Alpha, a fierce-looking woman with obsidian eyes, spoke up. Her claws were still extended, blood drying on their tips. "Concealing a Moon Singer from the territories is treason against the old compact. Alpha Thorn will face judgment," Alaric assured her, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of the Alpha King. "But for now, we tend to our wounded and honor our dead. The conspiracy he led has been exposed, but its full extent remains unknown." His grip on my hand tightened slightly. "Lyra needs protection until we understand who else might have been involved." The mention of my name in such company, spoken as if I mattered, as if I were someone of importance, sent a strange thrill through me. 6 years of enforced invisibility had not prepared me for this moment. "I need to find my sister," I said, suddenly remembering Ara. With all that had happened, I'd lost track of her in the chaos. Alaric nodded. "Of course. The healer's station is this way." He led me through the hall, past wolves cleaning up the destruction and tending to the injured. Many stopped what they were doing to watch us pass, some dropping their heads in respectful acknowledgement. I fought the urge to lower my eyes as I'd been conditioned to do for so long. Instead, I stood straight, walking beside the Alpha King as if I belonged there. We found Ara kneeling beside a young wolf with a nasty gash across his shoulder. Her blue healer's robes were stained with blood, her dark hair escaping its neat braid. When she looked up and saw me, relief flooded her face. "Lyra!" She sprang to her feet and embraced me fiercely. "Thank the moon you're safe. When I saw Valerian drag you away, I feared—" She stopped, noticing Alaric standing beside me, their hands still joined. Her golden eyes widened. "Your Majesty." She dropped into a formal bow, but Alaric waved it away. "Your sister has just saved us all, Healer Ara. If anyone should be bowing, it's me." Ara's gaze darted between us, confusion evident in her expression. "I don't understand. What happened?" "Your sister is a Moon Singer," Alaric said simply, as if those words explained everything. And perhaps they did, because Ara's expression shifted from confusion to something like resigned understanding. "Grandmother was right," she whispered, more to herself than to us. "She said it would emerge when most needed." I stared at my sister, the implications of her words sinking in. "You knew?" The question came out sharper than I'd intended. Ara winced. "Not exactly. Grandmother never spoke plainly about it. But she made me promise to keep you safe, to ensure you weren't completely isolated after your rejection." She reached out to touch the pendant at my throat. "And to make sure you wore this at the gathering of the 5 packs. The rejection was part of it, wasn't it?" I asked, the pieces falling into place, a way to hide me in plain sight. Ara nodded slowly. "I think so. Grandmother said sometimes one must step into darkness before finding one's true light." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Lyra. I didn't know what it all meant, but I trusted her wisdom. I wanted to be angry. 6 years of living as an outcast, of enduring whispers and cruel glances, of existing on the periphery of my own life. But looking at my sister's face, I couldn't summon the rage. She had been as much a pawn in this game as I had been. "It's done," I said finally. "But no more secrets between us, Ara. Promise me." "I promise," she whispered, squeezing my hand. A commotion near the entrance of the great hall drew our attention. 4 warriors from the northern pack entered, dragging between them the unconscious form of Beta Valerian. "Your Majesty," one called to Alaric, "we found him collapsed outside your sanctuary. He's alive but unresponsive." Alaric glanced at me, one eyebrow raised in silent question. "I sang to defend myself," I admitted. "He was trying to break down the door. Said Alpha Thorn had ordered me brought back dead or alive." The Alpha King's expression darkened. "Take him to the holding cells," he ordered his warriors. "Post guards. When he wakes, I want to know who else was involved in this conspiracy." As the warriors dragged Valerian away, Alaric turned to Ara. "Your sister will need her things brought from the Eastern Territory. Can you arrange this?" Ara hesitated, her loyalty to our pack warring with the knight's revelations. "Alpha Thorn will not allow it," she said finally. "Our cabin and everything in it will be considered forfeit now that we're—" She trailed off, uncertain how to define our new status. "Under the protection of the northern pack," Alaric finished for her. "And soon, I suspect, all 5 territories." He thought for a moment. "I'll send my most trusted warriors with you. They'll ensure you can retrieve what you need safely." A young Beta approached us, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty, the other Alphas request your presence in the council chamber. They say it's urgent." Alaric nodded, then turned to me. "Will you join us, Lyra? A moon singer has not sat in council for centuries, but if we're to restore the old ways, there's no better time to start." The request took me by surprise. 6 years of conditioning made me want to refuse, to retreat to the shadows where rejected Omegas belonged. But the warmth of the pendant against my skin and the memory of my grandmother's words gave me courage. "Yes," I said, standing taller. "I'll join you." The council chamber was smaller than the great hall, but no less impressive. A circular table of polished oak dominated the space, 5 ornate chairs positioned around it. Ancient tapestries depicting the history of the wolf kind hung on the stone walls, their colors still vibrant despite the passage of centuries. The 4 other Alphas were already seated when we entered. They rose as Alaric led me into the chamber, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion. "A moon singer in council," the Forest Alpha said, his ancient voice crackling like dry leaves. "I never thought I'd live to see the day." "Is this wise, Alaric?" the Southern Alpha questioned, her obsidian eyes fixed on me. "We know nothing of this Omega except that she was rejected by her own pack." "I know enough," Alaric replied firmly. "I've heard her sing. I've seen her stop a battle with nothing but her voice, and I've witnessed her courage firsthand." He pulled out the chair to his right, the traditional place of the highest advisor. "Lyra Moonshade has earned her place at this table." I sat, trying to appear more confident than I felt. The weight of centuries seemed to press down on me as I took my place in a tradition I'd only just learned existed. The conspiracy runs deeper than we thought. The Western Alpha, Raoul, began without preamble. "Our interrogation of the captured rogues revealed they were paid handsomely to attack tonight, not by Southern leaders as we assumed, but by wolves from within our own territories." "Alpha Thorn's work," the Southern Alpha growled. "Not alone," Raoul countered. "The rogues received their payment from representatives of all 5 packs." A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. Traitors in every territory, working together to maintain the division of the packs. "For generations," the Forest Alpha said slowly, "certain families have benefited from keeping the territories separate. Trade agreements that enrich the few, marriage alliances that consolidate power, border disputes that distract from internal corruption, and suppression of the moon singers to ensure no voice could unite us." Alaric added, his storm-gray eyes meeting mine. "I found my voice at last. Alpha Thorn said the Eastern Pack has controlled my bloodline for generations, keeping us weak, hidden, but useful." The words still burned with betrayal. "My grandmother was rejected too, and her mother before her. A systematic breeding program," the Southern Alpha said bluntly. "Selecting for weaker traits, diluting the bloodline while keeping it intact enough to be useful for minor enchantments and healings." The clinical way she described it made my skin crawl, but I couldn't deny the truth of it. How many of my ancestors had lived and died never knowing their true heritage, their true power. And yet, despite their efforts, the bloodline remained strong enough to produce you, Alaric said softly. His hand found mine under the table, a private gesture of support. The Forest Alpha leaned forward, his ancient eyes studying me intently. Sing for us, child, not to enchant, but to prove. The true voice of a moon singer carries a distinctive resonance that cannot be faked. I hesitated, glancing at Alaric. He nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, I began to sing. Not the ancient power that had felled Valerian or the unifying call that had stopped the battle, but a simple melody my grandmother had taught me as a child, a song about the moon's journey across the night sky, watching over all wolves regardless of territory or rank. The notes filled the chamber, pure and clear. I kept the power reined in, letting them hear my natural voice without the enchantment that had so frightened Alpha Thorn. When I finished, the Forest Alpha nodded, satisfaction evident in his wizened face. It is as I suspected, not just any moon singer, but one of the royal line. The crescent mark behind her ear isn't a rejection scar at all, but a birthmark, the sign of the first singer. I reached up to touch the mark I'd spent years hiding beneath my hair. But Alpha Thorn gave me this mark during the rejection ceremony. I remember the ritual, the pain. A clever deception, the Forest Alpha said. The mark was already there from birth. The ceremony merely provided an explanation for what could not be hidden, turning your greatest identifier into a mark of shame. I felt as if the ground beneath me had shifted once again. Everything I thought I knew about myself, even the mark I'd hated for so long, was being rewritten. Then what happens now? I asked, looking around at the gathered alphas. What does all this mean for the territories? For me? It means, Alaric said, his voice firm with conviction, that the time has come to fulfill the ancient prophecy. 5 fingers of one hand, 5 streams of one river, just as you sang. The territories will unite once more, with the Alpha King and the Moon Singer leading together as in the days of old. He rose from his chair, and the other alphas followed suit. But first, we must root out the conspiracy that has kept us divided for centuries. Every traitor, in every pack, must be exposed and brought to justice. His storm-gray eyes met mine, intense and determined. And we must protect you, Lyra. You are the key to everything, our past and our future. As I looked around at the faces of the most powerful wolves in the territories, I realized just how dramatically my life had changed in the span of a single night. From rejected Omega to legendary Moonsinger, from invisible to essential. The pendant seemed to pulse against my skin, as if affirming this new path stretching before me. Whatever came next, I would face it standing tall, my voice unsilenced, my power unbound. The reign of the Alpha King and the Moonsinger had begun. The council meeting continued late into the night. Maps were brought out, oaths were renewed, and plans were made to investigate every territory for conspirators. Through it all, I tried to absorb as much as I could about the politics and histories of the packs, knowledge that had been deliberately kept from me during my years of rejection. The first singer was named Arya Moonshade, the Forest Alpha explained as the night deepened. His ancient voice carried the weight of oral histories passed down through generations. She united the scattered wolf clans under the first Alpha King, Darius Blackthorn. Together, they created the great covenant that bound our kind in harmony with each other and the land. The similarity between those ancient names and ours, Lyra and Alaric, wasn't lost on anyone in the chamber. Destiny had a strange way of weaving its patterns through time. How did it end? I asked. If the Union was so powerful, why did the territories divide? A shadow crossed the old wolf's face. Betrayal, greed, the eternal weaknesses of our kind. When the last recognized Moonsinger died 3 centuries ago, certain powerful families seized the opportunity to fragment the kingdom, each carving out their own territory and establishing new hierarchies that benefited them. And the Moonshade line? Alaric prompted. Hunted nearly to extinction, the Forest Alpha replied grimly. Those who survived went into hiding, their abilities suppressed, their knowledge fragmented. The Eastern Pack's role in controlling the remnants of the bloodline began about 2 centuries ago, when they discovered a moonshade Omega living on their borders. I thought of my grandmother, of her quiet strength, and the secret knowledge she'd passed to me in fragments. How many generations had lived and died with their power locked away, their heritage reduced to whispered stories and hidden symbols. By the time the council adjourned, the first light of dawn was breaking over the mountains. Alaric rose from his chair, his expression solemn but determined. "We have much work ahead of us," he announced to the gathered alphas. "But for now, rest. We reconvene at midday to begin implementing our plans." As the others filed out, he turned to me. Up close, I could see the exhaustion lining his face, the dried blood still clinging to his skin from the battles he'd fought. "You should rest too," I told him, concern softening my voice. A half-smile curved his lips. "As should you, Moonsinger. It's been quite a night for revelations." He led me from the council chamber through corridors I hadn't seen before. The northern stronghold was vast, carved into the very mountain itself, a labyrinth of passages and chambers that would take months to fully explore. "These will be your quarters," he said, stopping before an ornately carved wooden door. "They belonged to the Moonsingers of old, when they still advised the Alpha Kings." He pushed the door open, revealing a spacious suite that took my breath away. Unlike the stark functionality I was accustomed to, these rooms were beautiful. Tapestries depicting moonlit forests adorned the walls, and a large circular window of stained glass dominated one wall, designed to catch the light of the moon at its zenith. I struggled to find words as I stepped inside, taking in the plush bed with its silver blue coverings, the sitting area with comfortable chairs before a small hearth, the bookshelves filled with ancient tomes. "It's too much. It's exactly what you deserve," Alaric said firmly. "Your birthright, Lyra." The use of my name still sent a strange thrill through me. To be addressed directly by the Alpha King, to be seen as a person of value rather than a shadowy non-entity, it was a heady feeling. "Thank you," I said, turning to face him. Something shifted in his expression as our eyes met. A softening, a vulnerability I hadn't expected from the most powerful alpha in the territories. "Sleep well, Lyra Moonshade," he said, his voice lower than before. "Guards will be posted outside your door. No one will disturb you." With a slight bow of his head, an alpha showing respect to an omega, an unthinkable sight just a day ago, he turned to leave. "Alaric," I called after him, surprising myself with my boldness. He paused in the doorway, looking back at me with those storm-gray eyes. "Thank you," I said again, but meaning something deeper this time, for seeing me when everyone else looked away. Something flashed across his face, too quick to interpret fully, but intense enough to make my heart stutter. "Perhaps," he said softly. We were both waiting to be truly seen. With those enigmatic words, he was gone, the door closing silently behind him. Left alone, I explored my new quarters, running my fingers over fine fabrics and ancient books, marveling at the change in my circumstances. Just yesterday, I had been sleeping on a thin pallet in the servants' quarters of the Eastern Pack's compound, wearing gray, homespun clothes that marked me as rejected. Now I stood in chambers fit for royalty, with a destiny I was only beginning to understand unfolding before me. Exhaustion finally caught up with me, and I sank onto the bed, not even bothering to remove my plain gray dress, the last vestige of my old life. As sleep claimed me, I could still feel the echo of Alaric's touch on my hand, the memory of his storm-gray eyes holding mine, as if I were the most fascinating creature he'd ever encountered. I dreamed of singing, of moonlight, of a black wolf running beside me through forests untouched by division or betrayal. I was awakened by a soft knock on my door. Disoriented, I sat up, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings until the events of the previous night came rushing back. "Yes?" I called, smoothing my rumpled dress and trying to tame my tangled hair. The door opened to reveal Ara, carrying a bundle of clothing and a tray of food. Her familiar face was a welcome sight amidst so much change. "Good morning, or rather, good afternoon," she said with a smile, setting the tray on a small table. "You've slept half the day away, though no one blames you after last night." She placed the bundle of clothing on the bed beside me. "The warriors escorted me to our cabin as promised. I've brought some of your things, what little you had." and some new items more befitting your position." There was a hint of uncertainty in her voice, as if she wasn't quite sure how to address me now. The shift in our relationship pained me, but I understood it. Everything had changed. "You're still my sister, Era," I said softly. "That hasn't changed, no matter what else has." Relief flooded her face. "I was worried," she admitted. "The way the Alphas looked at you in council, the way the Alpha King himself treats you, it's a lot to process. For me too," I assured her, examining the clothes she'd brought. Among my few familiar possessions were several new garments, a flowing dress of silver blue silk, a finely woven cloak with a clasp shaped like a crescent moon, soft leather boots embroidered with tiny stars. "Where did these come from?" I asked, running my fingers over the exquisite craftsmanship. "The Alpha King ordered them prepared for you," Ara explained. Apparently, there were traditional garments for moonsingers stored away all these centuries, waiting for the bloodline to re-emerge. The thought of Alaric thinking of such details while managing a political crisis and the aftermath of an attack warmed something deep inside me. "He's called another council meeting," Ara continued. "They're waiting for you before they begin." A flutter of nervousness passed through me. "They're waiting for me? Why?" "Because you're the moon singer," Ara said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "And because they've just received news from the borders. Scouts report movement from all territories, warriors gathering, positions being fortified. War," I whispered, the food Ara had brought suddenly forgotten. "Not yet," she said grimly. "But the conspirators won't surrender their power easily. Alpha Thorn may be imprisoned, but his allies remain free, and they control significant forces in all 5 territories." The weight of responsibility settled over me like a physical burden. My emergence as a moonsinger had triggered this crisis, or perhaps merely accelerated a conflict that had been brewing for generations. "I'll dress quickly," I said, rising from the bed with newfound determination. "Will you help me?" With Ara's assistance, I transformed from the rejected Omega in her gray dress to something out of legend. The silver blue silk flowed around my body like water, the fabric light yet warm. The cloak settled on my shoulders as if made for me, which, in a sense, it had been, crafted for a role I was born to fill. My grandmother's pendant remained at my throat, now complemented by the fine clothing rather than standing out against homespun gray. Ara stepped back, her eyes widening as she took in the complete effect. "You look," she began, then shook her head, seemingly at a loss for words. "Different?" I suggested. "Like yourself," she corrected. "Your true self." Before we left, I paused at the circular stained glass window, studying my reflection in the colored panes. The woman who looked back at me was both familiar and strange, my features, but framed by the trappings of power and purpose I'd never imagined for myself. The crescent mark behind my ear, visible now that I'd styled my hair to show rather than hide it, seemed to gleam in the afternoon light. Not a mark of rejection, but a sign of my lineage. Not a curse, but a birthright. The guards outside my door, 2 imposing northern warriors, straightened to attention as we emerged. One stepped forward, bowing his head slightly. "Moonsinger," he said, the title still strange to my ears. "I'll escort you to the council chamber." The corridors were busy with activity, warriors drilling, messengers rushing back and forth, servants repairing damage from the previous night's attack. All paused as I passed, heads bowing in respect, or eyes widening in curiosity. Word had clearly spread throughout the stronghold about what I was. The council chamber doors stood open when we arrived. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The 4 Alphas and Alaric gathered around the circular table, examining maps spread across its surface. Alaric looked up as I entered, and for a moment, everything else in the room seemed to fade away. His eyes widened slightly as he took in my transformed appearance, a flash of something primal and appreciative crossing his face before he schooled his expression back to regal composure. "Lyra," he said, my name a welcome on his lips. "We've been waiting for you." As I moved to take my place at the table, I noticed the chair to Alaric's right had been replaced. Where before there had been 5 identical chairs around the table, now the one reserved for me was different. Carved with crescents and stars, inlaid with silver that caught the light. The Moonsinger's seat, restored to its rightful place in council. We've received reports from all borders. Raoul, the Western Alpha, began without preamble as I sat down. Forces are mobilizing in every territory. Alpha Thorn's loyalists are calling for his release and denouncing the Northern Pack for kidnapping their Omega. They spin quite a tale, the Southern Alpha added, her obsidian eyes flashing with anger. According to their messengers, the Alpha King has stolen a simple rejected Omega with dangerous unnatural abilities. No mention of Moonsingers or ancient bloodlines. They're controlling the narrative, Alaric said grimly. Most wolves in the outer territories know nothing of Moonsingers or the Old Covenant. They'll see this as northern aggression, an attempt to seize power. Then we must tell them the truth, I said, finding my voice. All eyes turned to me. Let me speak to them. Let them hear the voice of a Moonsinger and decide for themselves. Too dangerous, Alaric immediately objected. The conspirators would never allow you close enough to be heard. They'd kill you first. Not if I'm protected, I countered. Not if we approach this strategically. The Forest Alpha nodded slowly, his ancient eyes gleaming with approval. The girl speaks wisdom. The voice is her power, and it cannot be countered with conventional weapons. If she can be heard, she can turn the tide. It would require visiting each territory, Raoul pointed out. A dangerous journey even in peaceful times. Not necessarily, I said, an idea forming in my mind. What if we bring them to us instead? A summit of all territories, here at the Northern Stronghold. A chance for representatives from all packs to hear the truth directly. Alaric considered this, his brow furrowed in thought. It could work, he said finally. We offer safe passage to delegates from each territory, including the conspirators themselves. They'll come, if only to spy on our defenses or attempt another attack. And when they arrive, the Southern Alpha said with a predatory smile, they'll hear the Moonsinger and learn the truth about their leader's betrayal. Some will still resist, the Forest Alpha cautioned. Those who benefit most from the division won't surrender their power willingly, no matter how compelling the voice. Then we must be prepared for conflict, Alaric said, his expression hardening. But if we can win over enough of the common wolves, turn enough warriors to our cause, we can minimize the bloodshed. His eyes met mine across the table, intense and searching. It's risky, Lyra. The conspirators will know exactly what we're planning, yet come anyway, believing they can counter it somehow. Which means they believe they have a way to neutralize a Moonsinger, I realized aloud, a chill running down my spine. Some weapon or method they've kept secret all these years. All the more reason to proceed with caution, Alaric said. If we do this, you must be protected at all costs. You are the key to everything, Lyra. The way he said it, with such certainty, such conviction, made something inside me both expand and constrict simultaneously. The burden of such importance was overwhelming, yet the faith he placed in me was empowering. I understand the risks, I said, meeting his gaze steadily, but I also understand what's at stake. The territories have been divided too long. If my voice can heal that breach, I must try. A moment of silence followed my words, as each Alpha considered the path before us. Then, one by one, they nodded their agreement. So be it, Alaric declared, his voice resonating with authority. We will send messengers to all territories, inviting delegates to a summit 3 days hence, and we will prepare, both for peace and for war. As the council moved on to discuss logistics and security measures, I caught Alaric watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher: pride, concern, and something deeper, more personal. The Alpha King and the Moonsinger, preparing to reshape the world as they knew it, just as our ancestors had done centuries before. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparations. Messengers were dispatched to all territories with formal invitations to the summit. Warriors trained in the courtyards, their snarls and the clash of weapons a constant backdrop. Servants bustled through the stronghold, preparing accommodations for the expected delegates. And I tried to adjust to my new reality. Each morning, I woke in the Moon Singer's chambers, still half expecting to find myself back on my thin pallet in the Eastern Pack's servants' quarters. Each day brought new lessons in protocol, history, and the ancient practices of my bloodline. The Forest Alpha had assigned his pack's eldest historian, a wizened beta named Thea, to instruct me in the traditions I should have learned from birth. The voice is the vessel, but intent is the rudder, Thea explained as we sat in my chambers on the second day. Her gnarled fingers traced symbols in an ancient text spread between us. A moon singer without control is like a storm without direction. Powerful, but chaotic. I thought of how my voice had affected the wolves in the Great Hall, how it had felled Valerian without my conscious intent to harm him. How do I learn control? Through understanding your connection to the moon, she replied. Your power waxes and wanes with its phases. Tonight is the full moon. Your voice will be at its strongest. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. If my untrained voice had been powerful enough to stop a battle, what might it do at its full potential? Focus, Thea continued, tapping the text before us. That is what separates a true moon singer from a mere enchanter. You must learn to channel your intent precisely, to touch minds without overwhelming them. I spent hours practicing under her guidance, singing scales and ancient melodies while focusing on specific emotions or images. It was exhausting work, requiring a level of concentration I'd never developed during my years of forced servitude. By evening, my throat was raw, and my head ached with effort. As twilight descended, a knock at my door interrupted another session with Thea. Ara entered, carrying a small vial of herbal tonic. For your throat, she explained, handing it to me. I can hear the strain in your voice, I accepted gratefully, swallowing the bitter liquid in one gulp. The cooling sensations spread immediately, soothing the rawness. The Alpha King requests your presence for dinner, Ara added, a hint of curiosity in her golden eyes. In his private dining room, my pulse quickened at the news. Since the council meeting, Alaric had been busy with defensive preparations, and I'd seen him only briefly in passing or during strategy sessions. The thought of speaking with him alone made my stomach flutter in a way that had nothing to do with anxiety and everything to do with the memory of his storm-gray eyes holding mine. You should wear the blue dress, Ara suggested, a knowing smile playing at her lips. The one that matches your eyes. I frowned at her. This isn't a romantic engagement, Ara. It's likely about the summit. Of course, she agreed, though her smile didn't diminish. Still, the blue dress would be appropriate for a private dinner with the Alpha King, regardless of the topic of conversation. I sighed, but couldn't deny that part of me wanted to look my best for Alaric. Fine. The blue dress. After Ara helped me dress and arranged my hair to show the crescent birthmark rather than hide it, I followed a guard through the winding corridors of the stronghold to Alaric's private quarters. The massive wooden door was carved with the emblem of the Northern Pack. A howling wolf against a full moon. The guard knocked, and Alaric's deep voice called for me to enter. Inside, I found a room that perfectly reflected its occupant. Elegant yet practical, powerful yet understated. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, casting warm light over comfortable furnishings. A table was set for two near the fireplace, laden with steaming dishes that made my mouth water. Alaric rose as I entered, and the sight of him momentarily took my breath away. Gone was the formal attire of the Alpha King, replaced by a simple dark tunic that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. His black hair was damp, as if freshly washed, and the firelight caught the silver flecks in his storm-gray eyes. Lyra, he said, my name a welcome on his lips. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the invitation, I replied, suddenly conscious of how the blue dress clung to my figure in a way my old gray, shapeless garments never had. Something flickered in his expression as he took in my appearance. Appreciation, certainly, but also a deeper emotion I couldn't name. He moved forward to pull out my chair, a courtesy I'd never experienced before. I thought we might benefit from a private conversation, he said, as he took his own seat across from me, away from the formality of council meetings and the constant interruptions of preparation. To discuss the summit? I asked, accepting the glass of wine he poured for me. A slight smile curved his lips. That too. But first I thought we might simply talk. As Lyra and Alaric. not just as Moonsinger and Alpha King. The suggestion warmed me more than the fire or the wine. "What would you like to talk about? Tell me about your life," he said, his expression genuinely interested. "Not the rejection or the conspiracy. I want to know about you, your dreams, your thoughts, the parts of yourself you kept hidden all those years." No one had ever asked me such questions before. Rejected Omegas weren't supposed to have dreams or thoughts worth sharing. We existed to serve, not to be known. "I used to dream of forests," I found myself saying, the words coming easier than I expected. Vast, ancient woods where pack boundaries didn't exist, where I could run freely without fear of crossing into forbidden territory. I sipped my wine, the rich flavor bolstering my courage. Sometimes in those dreams, I would sing to the trees, and they would bend toward me as if listening. "Your power manifesting even in sleep," Alaric observed. "Perhaps," I agreed. "What about you? What does the Alpha King dream of when he's not burdened with the weight of the territories?" A shadow crossed his face. "Peace," he said simply. "Since my father's death, I've dreamed of a united kingdom where strength isn't measured by how effectively we can dominate others." He met my gaze, vulnerability showing beneath his usual composure. "It's why I never took a mate, despite the political advantages it would have brought. I couldn't bear to forge an alliance that would only reinforce the divisions I hoped to heal." The admission surprised me. Alaric's reluctance to mate was well known throughout the territories, but I'd always assumed it stemmed from political caution or personal preference, not from such a profound vision. "And now?" I asked softly. "Do you still dream of unity?" "More than ever," he replied, his eyes never leaving mine. "But now it seems possible in a way it never did before. Because of you, Lyra." Heat crept up my neck at the intensity of his gaze. "I'm still learning what it means to be a Moonsinger. I don't know if I can fulfill the expectations everyone seems to have of me." "You already have," he said with conviction. "The moment you sang in the Great Hall, you changed everything. Not because of some ancient prophecy or bloodline, but because you had the courage to use your voice when it mattered most." We ate for a while in comfortable silence, the simple act of sharing a meal creating an intimacy I'd never experienced with anyone, let alone an alpha. The food was delicious: roasted venison, root vegetables seasoned with herbs, freshly baked bread still warm from the ovens, but I found myself more nourished by Alaric's company than by the meal itself. As we finished eating, he rose and moved to a cabinet near the hearth, returning with a small wooden box intricately carved with moon phases. "This belonged to the last known Moonsinger," he said, placing it before me. It was passed down through my family with instructions to keep it safe until the bloodline re-emerged. With trembling fingers, I opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of midnight blue velvet, lay a circlet of silver, delicate yet unmistakably a crown. Crescent moons and stars were woven into its design, matching the pendant at my throat. "The Moonsinger's circlet," Alaric explained. "Traditionally worn during formal councils and ceremonies. I thought you might want to wear it at the summit." I touched it hesitantly, feeling a strange resonance as my fingers made contact with the cool metal. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "Try it on," he encouraged. Carefully, I lifted the circlet and placed it on my head. The weight was substantial, but not uncomfortable, and it seemed to settle naturally, as if recognizing its rightful wearer. Alaric's breath caught audibly. "It was made for you," he said, his voice rougher than before. "Or you for it?" The moment hung between us, charged with something beyond words. Then, slowly, he reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine where they rested near the empty box. The contact sent a jolt of electricity up my arm, just as it had that first night when he'd taken my hand. "Lyra," he began, his voice low and intense. "There's something you should know before the summit. Something about the connection between Alpha Kings and Moonsingers that the histories only hint at." My heart thundered in my chest. "What is it?" Before he could answer, a urgent knock came at the door. Alaric's expression darkened with frustration as he called for the visitor to enter. A warrior burst in, his face grim. "Your Majesty, forgive the interruption. We've captured spies at the eastern perimeter. wolves from Alpha Thorn's inner circle attempting to infiltrate the stronghold. Alaric was on his feet instantly, the intimate moment shattered. Were they alone? No, sire. Scouts report a force gathering in the eastern forests. It seems they're not waiting for the summit to make their move. Alaric's jaw tightened. Assemble the war council immediately. He turned to me, regret evident in his eyes. Lyra. I'll come with you, I said, rising from my chair, the circlet still on my brow. If there's to be conflict, the Moonsinger should be present. Pride flashed across his face, briefly replacing the regret. Yes, he agreed. The Moonsinger should be present. As we hurried through the corridors toward the council chamber, the stronghold buzzing with activity around us, I felt the weight of the circlet as a physical reminder of my new role. Whatever Alaric had been about to tell me about the connection between our lineages would have to wait. War was coming to our door, and I would need every ounce of my newly discovered power to face it. The war council was already assembled when we arrived. The 4 alphas, their top warriors, and several of Alaric's most trusted advisors. All eyes turned to us as we entered, many widening at the sight of the circlet on my head. The Eastern Pack moves against us, Alaric announced without preamble, striding to the map table at the center of the room. What do we know of their numbers and position? At least 60 warriors at the forest edge, reported a scarred beta with the Northern Pack's insignia on his shoulder. More gathering behind them. They've brought silver weapons. A murmur ran through the assembled wolves. Silver couldn't kill our kind, but wounds from silver weapons healed slowly, painfully, leaving us vulnerable in battle. They know traditional weapons won't be enough against a Moonsinger, the Southern Alpha observed, her obsidian eyes meeting mine. They mean to neutralize you before you can use your voice. The prisoners, Alaric said sharply. What have they revealed? Nothing yet, the beta reported. They refuse to speak, even under duress. I stepped forward, an idea forming. Let me try, I said, not with force, but with my voice. Alaric frowned. You've had little training, and using your power in such a targeted way is exactly what I've been practicing, I finished for him, straightening my shoulders beneath the weight of the circlet. Let me try, Alaric. After a moment of consideration, he nodded. Bring the prisoners to the small council chamber, he ordered. We'll question them there. The spies, 3 betas from Alpha Thorn's personal guard, were brought in chains to the smaller, more secure chamber adjacent to the main council room. Their expressions showed defiance tinged with fear as they were forced to kneel before us. I stood beside Alaric, conscious of how we must appear to these wolves who had known me only as a rejected Omega, the Alpha King in his power, and the Moonsinger crowned with silver, united as in the days of old. You know why you're here, Alaric addressed the prisoners, his voice cold with authority. Speak truly of Alpha Thorn's plans, and you may yet live to see the new era dawn. The leader of the 3, a burly beta with a scar bisecting his left eye, spat on the floor. We recognize no authority but Alpha Thorn's. The Northern Pack has no right to interfere in Eastern affairs or to kidnap our Omega. I wasn't kidnapped, I said calmly. I am here by choice, reclaiming my birthright as a Moonsinger, the beta sneered. A rejected Omega playing dress-up in ancient regalia. Your voice may have some unnatural power, but it won't save you or the Alpha King when our forces— He stopped abruptly. Realizing he'd said too much, I stepped closer, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. What are your forces planning? I asked. And as I spoke, I let my voice carry the melody Thea had taught me earlier, the tone of truth-seeking, designed to open minds rather than overwhelm them. The beta's expression flickered, his eyes growing unfocused as my voice washed over him. I maintained the melody, weaving it gently around the 3 prisoners. Tell me, I said, the words flowing into the song. What does Alpha Thorn plan? An attack at moonrise, the beta replied, his voice distant, as if speaking from a trance. The Eastern forces are to engage the Northern guards at the main gate, while a smaller unit infiltrates through the Western Passage. What Western Passage? Alaric demanded, looking to his warriors. The old mining tunnel, one replied grimly. It was sealed decades ago, but if they've found it. Alpha Thorn knows all the secrets of the Northern stronghold, the beta continued, still caught in the influence of my voice. He has studied it for years, preparing for this moment. And what is the purpose of the attack? I pressed. maintaining the melody despite the strain in my throat. Why not wait for the summit? The moonsinger must not speak at the summit, the beta said, his glazed eyes fixed on some middle distance. Her power grows with the full moon. Tonight she must be silenced before the 5 territories hear her voice. A chill ran through me at his words. How do they plan to silence me? The beta's eyes suddenly cleared, resistance returning as he fought against my influence. I strengthened the melody, focusing my intent as Thea had taught me. The silver collar, he gasped, struggling against both my voice and his own compulsion to answer, forged from the same ore as the ancient bindings. Once locked around a moonsinger's throat, it negates their power completely. The revelation sent a wave of murmurs through the assembled wolves. Alaric's expression darkened to something dangerous. Where is this collar now? He demanded. With Alpha Thorn's second, the beta replied, sweat beading on his brow as he continued to fight my influence. She leads the infiltration team. They have orders to capture the moonsinger alive if possible, to kill her if necessary. I let my voice fade, the melody dissipating as I processed this information. A silver collar that could negate my power. Another piece of my heritage that had been twisted and used against my bloodline. Alaric turned to his warriors. Secure the western passage. Double the guards at all entrances. No one enters or leaves the stronghold until this threat is neutralized. As the warriors rushed to carry out his orders, he turned to me, concern evident in his storm-gray eyes. You should return to your chambers, Lyra. With guards. Many guards. I shook my head, the circlet catching the light as I moved. No, if they're coming for me, I won't hide. I'll stand with you and the pack. This isn't about courage, he argued, his voice lowering as he stepped closer. It's about protecting what's most precious to our future. His hand reached up, almost touching my cheek before he seemed to remember we weren't alone. To my future, he added softly. The admission, made in such a critical moment, sent warmth blooming through my chest despite the danger surrounding us. But I stood firm. The moonsinger's place is beside the Alpha King, I said, the words feeling ancient on my tongue, as if I were speaking from a memory not my own, in council and in battle. That's the tradition we're fighting to restore, isn't it? Something shifted in his expression. Pride, admiration, and that deeper emotion I still couldn't name but increasingly hoped might be something more personal than political alliance. So it is, he agreed finally, but you'll stay with me at all times, and at the first sign of that silver collar, you retreat to safety. Promise me, Lyra. I promise, I said, though we both knew such promises were easy to make and harder to keep in the chaos of battle. As we left the chamber to prepare for the coming attack, Alaric's hand found mine, squeezing it briefly but firmly. In that gesture was everything he couldn't say aloud: concern, determination, and something that felt remarkably like the beginning of love. The full moon was rising, and with it, my power would reach its peak. The question that hung between us, unspoken but pressing: would it be enough to face what was coming? The full moon rose over the northern stronghold, bathing the stone walls in silver light. I stood beside Alaric on the eastern rampart, watching as torches flickered to life in the forest beyond. The eastern pack was making no attempt to hide their presence, a deliberate show of force meant to intimidate. I touched the circlet on my brow, drawing strength from its weight and what it represented. The pendant at my throat seemed to pulse with the moonlight, warming against my skin, as if awakening to its power. They'll attack from multiple points, Alaric said, his voice low as he surveyed the gathering forces. The eastern approach is a diversion. Their main thrust will come through the western passage. And the silver collar? I asked, unable to keep the tremor from my voice. The thought of having my newly discovered power stripped away, of being silenced again after finally finding my voice, chilled me to the bone. My best warriors guard the western passage, he assured me. And I've stationed Era and the healers in a secure chamber far from any potential fighting. Your sister will be safe. His thoughtfulness touched me deeply. Even in the midst of preparing for battle, he had considered my personal concerns. Thank you, I said softly. His storm-gray eyes met mine, intense in the moonlight. When this is over, Lyra, there's much we need to discuss about the future, about us, My heart quickened at his words. Us? Before he could respond, a howl split the night, the battle cry of the Eastern Pack. It was answered immediately by dozens more, a chorus of challenge that echoed across the valley. It begins, Alaric said grimly. He turned to the northern warriors assembled behind us. To your positions. Remember, protect the Moonsinger at all costs. As the warriors dispersed, he turned back to me, something vulnerable flickering across his usually composed features. Stay close to me, he said, his voice rougher than before. Whatever happens, Lyra, stay close. The first wave of attackers reached the outer walls minutes later. They came in half-shifted form, deadly combinations of wolf and human that allowed for both bestial strength and the ability to wield weapons. Silver-tipped spears glinted in the moonlight as they scaled the walls, met by the fierce defense of the northern warriors. Alaric and I moved through the stronghold, directing defenses and rallying fighters. Despite the chaos, I felt strangely calm, as if the rising moon were feeding me not only power, but clarity. My voice, when I called out orders or encouragement, carried a subtle resonance that seemed to strengthen those who heard it. They've breached the lower level, a messenger reported, rushing toward us as we descended from the ramparts. The western passage. Our forces are engaged, but they're pushing through. Alaric's expression darkened. How many? At least 20, Your Majesty, led by a female beta with silver gauntlets. Valera, I whispered, recognizing the description. Alpha Thorn's second. She must have the collar. Alaric turned to me, his decision evident in his eyes before he spoke. We need to move you to a more secure position. No, I said firmly. I won't hide while others fight for me. Besides, if they've breached the stronghold, nowhere is truly safe. I touched the pendant at my throat, feeling its warm pulse. The full moon is at its zenith, Alaric. My voice is at its strongest. Let me use it. A battle between alpha instinct and tactical wisdom played out on his face. Finally, he nodded. Stay behind me, he ordered, then added more softly, Please. We hurried toward the western section of the stronghold, the sounds of combat growing louder with each step. As we rounded a corner into a wide corridor, we found ourselves face to face with the fighting. Northern warriors grappled with eastern intruders, the clash of weapons and snarls of rage echoing off the stone walls. And there, in the center of the melee, stood Valera, Alpha Thorn's second and my former tormentor. Her silver gauntlets gleamed as she slashed at a northern fighter, her movements precise and deadly. Around her neck hung a small pouch, its contents obvious from the way she guarded it. The collar. Alaric growled, his body tensing beside me. Valera's head snapped up at his voice, her amber eyes narrowing when she spotted us. A cold smile spread across her face. The Alpha King and his pet singer, she called, her voice carrying even over the battle. How convenient. We'd thought we'd have to hunt you through the entire stronghold. With a gesture of her silver-clad hand, she directed several fighters toward us. Alaric stepped forward to meet them, his body beginning to shift. Bones cracked and reformed as he took on his half-form, still bipedal, but with the increased strength, speed, and deadly claws of his wolf. Stay back, he growled to me, the words distorted by his lengthening jaw. The eastern wolves attacked in a coordinated rush. Alaric met them with ferocious skill, his movements fluid and precise despite the chaos. He was magnificent in battle, every bit the Alpha King the legends described. Powerful, commanding, unstoppable. But even he couldn't fight off 6 opponents at once. As he dispatched one attacker with a slash of his claws, another slipped past his guard, lunging toward me with a silver blade raised high. Instinctively I sang, not a directed melody as Thea had taught me, but a pure note of defensive power. The sound slammed into the attacker like a physical force, throwing him backward into the stone wall with a sickening crack. The fighting around us faltered as my voice echoed through the corridor. Wolves on both sides paused, momentarily transfixed by the sound. Valera recovered first, her eyes widening with a mixture of fear and determination. Take her now, she shouted to her remaining fighters. Before she can sing again, they rushed me from all sides. I drew breath to sing once more, but a heavy body crashed into me from behind, sending me sprawling to the floor. The impact knocked the air from my lungs, silencing me momentarily. "Lyra!" Alaric's roar contained equal parts rage and terror as he fought to reach me, 3 eastern wolves still blocking his path. Rough hands seized my arms, dragging me upright. I struggled against their grip, desperate to free myself, to find my voice again. Through the tangle of bodies, I saw Valera approaching, her hand reaching for the pouch at her neck. "The mighty moon singer," she sneered, withdrawing a circlet of dull silver from the pouch. Not beautiful like the one I wore, but crude and heavy, inscribed with symbols that seem to absorb rather than reflect the light. Not so powerful once this is around your throat. I renewed my struggles, managing to draw enough breath to sing a single pure note. One of the wolves holding me cried out, his grip loosening as he clutched his head in pain. I wrenched one arm free, reaching for the pendant at my throat as if it could protect me. Valera lunged forward, the collar extended in her silver gauntleted hands. "Your voice dies tonight," she hissed. "No." Alaric's voice thundered through the corridor as he finally broke through his opponents, leaving them broken and bleeding on the stone floor. He charged toward us, his half-shifted form a blur of deadly motion, but he was too far away. Valera's hands were already at my throat, the cold weight of the silver collar brushing my skin. Desperation surged through me, and with it, a power I hadn't known I possessed. I sang, not with my voice, but with my mind. The melody flowed outward from my consciousness, bypassing my throat entirely. It struck Valera like a physical blow, sending her stumbling backward, the collar falling from her nerveless fingers. Stunned, she stared at me with disbelieving eyes. "That's impossible," she gasped. "No moon singer has ever—" Her words cut off abruptly as Alaric reached her, his clawed hand closing around her throat. "You will never touch her again," he growled, his voice barely recognizable through his shifted form. "Wait," I said, finding my physical voice again. "Don't kill her." Alaric's grip tightened, his storm-gray eyes now amber with wolf rage. "She tried to silence you, Lyra, permanently." "And she failed," I replied, stepping forward to place a hand on his arm. "She's more valuable alive. She knows Alpha Thorn's plans, his allies in the other territories." For a moment I thought he might ignore me, his alpha instincts demanding the blood of those who had threatened what was his. Then, slowly, the amber faded from his eyes, storm gray returning as he regained control. "Take her to the cells," he ordered the northern warriors who had finally subdued the remaining eastern intruders. "Guard her well." As Valera was dragged away, her hateful gaze locked on me until she disappeared around a corner. The silver collar lay on the floor where she had dropped it, its dull surface seeming to drink in the torchlight. Alaric kicked it away with a look of disgust before turning to me, his half-shift receding as he returned to human form. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands gentle as they checked me for injuries. "I'm fine," I assured him, though my heart still raced from the close call. "But what I did, I don't understand how—" "You sang with your mind," he said, wonder evident in his voice. "The histories speak of the most powerful moon singers developing such abilities, but it was thought to be legend, not fact." A messenger interrupted us before I could respond. "Your Majesty, the Eastern forces are retreating from the walls. It seems they've received word of their leader's capture." Relief washed through me. The immediate danger was passing, though I knew the larger conflict was far from over. "Secure the stronghold," Alaric ordered. "Double the guards on all entrances. I want every corner of this mountain searched for additional intruders." As the warriors hurried to carry out his commands, he turned back to me, his expression softening. "You should rest, Lyra. It's been a long night." I shook my head. "I'm not tired. The moon—" I gestured toward a high window where silver light streamed in. "It's like I can feel its energy flowing through me." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "The full moon strengthens you, just as it does our wolf forms. But for a moon singer, it's more direct, more powerful." He hesitated, then added, "There's something I want to show you, something that relates to what I was trying to tell you earlier, before we were interrupted." Curiosity piqued, I nodded. "Lead the way." Alaric guided me through corridors I hadn't seen before, deeper into the mountain. We descended several flights of stairs, the air growing cooler and heavier with age. "These are the oldest parts of the stronghold," he explained as we walked, "built when the territories were still united, before the division." Finally, we reached a circular chamber much like the sanctum he had first brought me to, but larger and more ancient. The walls were covered in frescoes depicting wolves in various forms, human, half-shifted, and full wolf, all gathered around two central figures, an alpha male with a crown and an omega female with a circlet similar to the one I wore. "The first Alpha King and Moon Singer," I breathed, recognizing the scene from the ancient texts Thea had shown me. "Yes," Alaric confirmed. "Darius Blackthorn and Arya Moonshade, the founders of our lineages." He led me to the center of the chamber where a raised dais held two stone thrones, side by side, equal in size and ornamentation. One was carved with suns and wolves, the other with moons and stars, perfect complements, neither dominating the other. "The Alpha King and the Moon Singer ruled as equals," Alaric said, his voice soft with reverence. "Not just political allies, but partners in the truest sense, each incomplete without the other." He turned to face me, taking both my hands in his. "The histories speak of a bond between our bloodlines that transcends ordinary connections. When the true Alpha King meets the true Moon Singer, their souls recognize each other, as if they've been searching across centuries." My heart thundered in my chest, understanding dawning. "The electricity when we touch, the immediate trust between us, despite every reason for suspicion," he added. "The way your voice affects me differently than it does others, not controlling me, but resonating with something deep inside." He stepped closer, one hand rising to cup my cheek. "I've felt it since the moment you first sang in the Great Hall, Lyra. This pull toward you that defies explanation or resistance." "I felt it too," I admitted, leaning into his touch. Like finding a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. His storm gray eyes searched mine, vulnerability and hope warring with alpha pride. "The legends say that when the Alpha King and Moon Singer join in true partnership, their powers amplify each other's, creating something greater than either alone. Is that what you want?" I asked softly. "A political alliance to strengthen your rule?" A smile, tender and genuine, curved his lips. "What I want, Lyra Moonshade, has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with the way my heart races when you're near, the way your smile makes me forget I'm supposed to be the intimidating Alpha King, the way I can't imagine facing another day without hearing your voice." He took a deep breath, as if gathering courage for his next words. "I'm falling in love with you, Lyra. Not with the Moon Singer, though I respect her power, not with a political ally, though I value your wisdom, but with you, the woman who sang a lullaby in defiance of cruel traditions, who returned to battle rather than flee to safety, who looks at me as if I'm simply Alaric rather than the Alpha King." His confession stole my breath away. 6 years as a rejected Omega had taught me to expect nothing, to hope for nothing. Yet here stood the most powerful Alpha in all the territories, laying his heart bare before me. "I thought such things weren't possible," I whispered. "An Alpha and a rejected Omega." "You were never truly rejected," he reminded me gently. "And I am not just any Alpha, nor you just any Omega. We are the heirs to Darius and Arya, to a bond that unified territories and healed ancient wounds." He stepped even closer, our bodies nearly touching. "Tell me you don't feel it too, Lyra. Tell me I'm alone in this, and I'll never speak of it again." But I couldn't tell him that, because it would have been a lie. From the moment he'd first addressed me directly in the Great Hall, something had awakened between us. Something that had only grown stronger with each passing day. "I feel it," I admitted, my voice barely audible even in the silence of the ancient chamber. "I've never felt anything like it before. It terrifies me and exhilarates me in equal measure." Relief and joy bloomed across his face. Slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, he lowered his head until his lips hovered just above mine. "May I?" he whispered, the Alpha King asking permission of an Omega, upending every hierarchy I'd ever known. In answer, I closed the final distance between us. pressing my lips to his. The kiss began gently, almost reverently, but quickly deepened as 6 years of suppressed emotion and centuries of dormant connection ignited between us. His arms encircled me, drawing me against the solid warmth of his chest. My hands found their way to his shoulders, then into his midnight black hair, reveling in the freedom to touch him, to know him in this new way. When we finally parted, both breathless, the chamber around us seemed to glow with a soft light that hadn't been there before. The frescoes on the walls shimmered with renewed color, as if our connection had somehow awakened the ancient magic embedded in the stone itself. "The bond forms," Alaric murmured, his storm-gray eyes wide with wonder, as he gazed around us, then back to me, just as the legends described. I felt it too, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with physical desire, and everything to do with the ancient connection between our bloodlines. It was as if something long broken had finally begun to heal, not just between us but throughout the territories. "What happens now?" I asked, still cradled in his arms. "Tomorrow the summit begins," he replied. "Delegates from all territories will arrive, including those loyal to the conspiracy. They'll expect to find us weakened by tonight's attack, perhaps even to find you silenced by the collar." A smile, fierce and proud, curved his lips. "Instead, they'll find the Alpha King and the Moon Singer united, stronger than ever. They'll hear your voice at the height of its power, with the full moon's energy still flowing through you." His expression grew more serious. "It won't be easy, Lyra. The conspirators won't surrender their power without a fight. There may be more battles, more attempts to silence you." "I know," I said, drawing strength from his nearness. "But we face them together now, as equals, as partners. As it was always meant to be," he agreed, pressing his forehead to mine in a gesture of intimacy that felt both new and ancient. We remained in the chamber for a long time, sometimes talking of the challenges ahead, sometimes simply holding each other in comfortable silence. The bond between us continued to strengthen, a tangible connection that hummed with power and promise. When we finally emerged, the stronghold was quiet, the night's battle ended. The eastern forces retreated to lick their wounds. Warriors nodded respectfully as we passed, their eyes noting our clasped hands, but showing no surprise. Perhaps they too recognized the rightness of our union, the fulfillment of ancient prophecy in modern form. Alaric walked me to my chambers, reluctant to leave me even with guards posted outside my door. "I'll send Ara to you in the morning," he said, "to help you prepare for the summit." I nodded, equally reluctant to part from him. "What should I wear? How should I present myself?" "As you truly are," he replied simply. "The last moon singer, awakened to her power. The Omega who defied rejection to reclaim her birthright." His eyes softened as they traced my features. "The woman I'm falling in love with." One last kiss, tender yet promising more to come, and he was gone, striding down the corridor with the confident grace that had first caught my attention in the great hall. Inside my chambers, I moved to the circular window, gazing out at the full moon that had played such a crucial role in tonight's events. Its silver light bathed my face, and I felt its power resonating with the pendant at my throat and the circlet on my brow. Tomorrow, delegates from all territories would arrive for the summit. Tomorrow, I would use my voice to try to heal centuries of division and mistrust. Tomorrow, the true battle for the future of the wolf kind would begin. But tonight, in this moment of quiet between storms, I allowed myself to simply be Lyra. Not the rejected Omega, not even the legendary moon singer, but just a woman who had found her voice, her power, and perhaps even her heart's match. My grandmother's pendant seemed to warm against my skin, as if in approval. "A voice is power," she had told me. "When everything else is taken, what remains in your throat can never be stolen." She had been right, but incomplete. A voice was indeed power, but when united with the right heart, it became something even greater. It became hope. It became future. It became love. I turned from the window, a new sense of purpose filling me. The path ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't walking it alone. The Alpha King and the Moon Singer, Alaric and Lyra, bound by destiny and choice alike, Whatever tomorrow brought, we would face it together, just as our ancestors had done centuries before. And perhaps in doing so, we would finally heal the wounds that had divided our kind for far too long. The reign of the Alpha King and the Moon Singer had truly begun. And with it, a new chapter in the history of the wolf kind, one written in partnership rather than dominance, in unity rather than division, in love rather than fear. As I prepared for sleep, I hummed a melody I'd never heard before yet somehow knew by heart. The ancient song of bonding between Alpha King and Moon Singer. Its notes carrying a promise that transcended time itself. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but tonight I would dream of silver moonlight and storm-gray eyes, of ancient bonds renewed and futures yet to be written. Tomorrow, I would sing for all the territories to hear. Tonight, I sang only for him and for the hope that bloomed between us like a flower long dormant, finally reaching toward the sun.